An End to Ignorance. Law Book #4. The Final Chapter. Act #1. The administrator, already sitting upright from the nightmares that had consumed him from the past of that day in the Hads sector with the Hull D, covered in sweat and shaking. It then dawned on him. I know where he is, he thought to himself. He then got to his feet and headed straight for the shower. His next destination was Supernova in her office. A little while later the administrator was at the pressure door pressing it repeatedly to Supernova's command center. The doors were locked and no one was inside. He then thought to himself, maybe I shouldn't bring her in on this, but before he could finish his thought, from behind him in a beautiful and warm Russian accented voice, Good morning, Administrator, you're here awfully early, aren't you? The administrator then turned to Supernova, hair down and looking a true picture of perfect natural beauty, and simply smiled a wry smile. Supernova then entered into the keypad the security code and they both entered into the command center. Soon both had a coffee in hand and the morning's boot-up sequence had taken place. After some congenial idle chatter, the systems had fully come to life and Supernova then changed the subject to business again. It seems she had found some encrypted MESA files that were held on the old battle station of Castra in archive. How she got into their systems was her secret and hers alone. She went on to explain that the planet that had the war before their time on it in the Hads system wasn't actually a war from what scientific studies had deciphered. It was a catastrophic failure of a planet-wide power system with technology far beyond our comprehension still to this day. Something or someone had basically pressed the off switch but didn't perform the correct shutdown procedure, which led to planet-wide scaring and massive planetary explosions, wiping out everything on its surface. Prior to this it was an oxygen-rich, green world with a huge array of fauna and flora and very rare species of humanoids that were the apex predators. These were the Calorian. Yes, this was once our gummy friends Tularia's home planet until this event. The administrator, taken back this information, then further had his resolve sharpened and then rang out, he's there. He's on Hads 1. He knows how the GLYPHS work, as his species is the ones to have made this planet-wide power system. But for what I have my suspicions of already, but I won't speculate until I have a solid answer at this stage. Supernova, I know he's there, but I need to talk to someone first. I'll get back to you with preparations for our fleet. We are going to end this one way or another now. Supernova hesitated for a moment as to think of all the questions she had for the administrator, but then though wisely and simply replied with Roger that, sir, keep me abreast of the situation and further instructions please. The administrator, with a sense of conviction and incentivization in his eyes, then nodded and left briskly from the command office into the main center of the city, walking like a man on a mission, although no one had any real idea of how serious that mission was about to become. Narrator, in the meantime. Edvar darling, where are you? I'm getting lonely. Over the comms to Edvar's ship comms. A few minutes go by and no response. Natalia sat in her throne room with no one in the base, as they were all out on their daily raiding missions and simply had nothing to do. She had been reading through the archive messages from Edvar and was feeling a little, well, let's say excited, and wanted him to be there on this occasion with just them, if you get my meaning. But no response from him was also mildly infuriating at the same time, which just heightened her situation even further. Minutes later a message appears on her holoband. My queen, I have it. Natalia then activates her hailing call directly to his holoband and the conversation ensues. Edvar had found all the parts required for the 1000-bit encryption breaking device and, as promised, left no witnesses in the process, including a warlord in Jumtown in the Sol sector that was keeping the place under control. though a promise is a promise, right? He then explained that he had one more stop before heading back with the device fully assembled ready for use. Natalia in her state almost sabotaged this by saying that she needed him right there and then. Instead, she composed herself and asked for him to return as soon as possible as she has a surprise for him, one that will make his entire existence and reason for being worth it finally. Edvard, sensing something was amiss and began to think that something terrible had happened and that Natalia was ill. He responded to her with an assurance that he would be as quick as possible at his last stop to then fly home to her to hear about the news. Little did he know what she had in store for him. Hours passed and the crew were still out on their raiding missions. Natalia, sitting there in her throne room patiently waiting on Edvard's return, thought to herself, I should get into something more interesting for when he gets here. So with her spare time she went through all of the clothes that had been amassed over the years from countless ship raids and shopping sprees to find the perfect outfit that she could slink under the gear she normally wears as the big surprise for him. As she showered, put on a light bit of makeup and found the perfect attire, she looked at herself in the mirror to then realize this might be the last time and the only time we be together. This trip to 11 and space may be her and his last. She then, soon after finishing her makeup and getting dressed, shrugged the thoughts off and headed for the throne room ready for his return. Before she knew it, there was a docking request at the hangar doors. Edvard had truly kept his promise to get back early, that's for sure. For him it was a case of great concern, for her it was a case of great excitement. Edvard landed and briskly headed for the throne room to see what was going on, with 1,000 thoughts running through his mind as to what this surprise might be. He didn't do too well with surprises, and his life had never had a good surprise ever. It was always a surprise attack, a surprise assassination attempt against him. These, along with many more of these surprises, didn't ever amount to a positive experience. As he entered into the dimly lit though more than usual throne room, Natalia, with a look of intention in her eyes, said, "Hello darling, go and quickly clean up and have a shower. I have a huge surprise for you, and no, it's in no way what you think." Edvard, as obedient as always, headed for his quarters and did as he was told. Soon after he had exited the shower and dried off and got dressed, Natalia called beckoningly from the throne room. Edvard hadn't heard her talk to him like this before. What was she up to? What was this? He thought to himself as he briskly walked back to the throne room. As he entered the expanse in the base there, she was just standing there in the middle of the room with finger pointed, rolling it back to herself in an auto-reactive manner as to say, "Come here now." Edvard cautiously walked towards her. As he did, he could smell a scent on the air, something he hadn't smelled since childhood. It was perfume. Was Natalia wearing perfume? He began to think, or has a pair of sex slaves just been here with her watching them? Then he realized that's his deviant fantasy, not hers. Natalia just stood there for a moment, not a word spoken between them. She looked him up and down and began to smile, not a smirk but a genuine smile for once. Edvard's mind was racing, undressing her with his eyes as per usual, fantasizing over her. Had the next moment of his life change him as a man forever? Natalia gently leant in and whispered in his right ear, "Take me. Take me now, darling." Then latched gently onto his earlobe and sucked. Edvard's mind exploded and without hesitation gripped her sides gently but firmly and pulled her close. Then the passion began. Clothes stripped off to reveal the slinky frilly underwear Natalia was wearing. This sent Edvard to a new level of ecstasy and excitement, as it did Natalia in turn with his reaction. Moments later both of them are up against the throne, the walls, and well, you can guess the rest from here in yourself. Act #2. Many hours had passed. Both Natalia and Edvard, both dripping with sweat, headed for the shower in her quarters together for one last engagement. After the final moments, Edvard looked at Natalia and said these words, "Natalia, I love you, I've always loved you and I always will." Natalia began to sob uncontrollably for the first time in front of him or anyone to his recollection. She then soon gained composure again, enough to say, "As have I, darling, but our lives don't allow for normality, as you know. What we are about to face will be our most serious challenge yet. We have to go to the back of 11 in space and find something that will either be our end or make us the most powerful two people in the entire universe." Edvard then began to question her and how. Natalia then told him everything as they exited the shower and began to get dressed. Although that's the last thing either of them wanted, it was necessary as the crew would be back soon and this had to stay firmly under wraps or there would be a mutiny on their hands and 2 vs 50 wouldn't end well for them at this point. Soon they were dressed and headed for the throne room, only to be intercepted by one of the crew who had come back early ahead of the rest, as he had been quite badly wounded in the raids and was in need of a medical bed to save his worthless life. At first both Natalia and Edvard were in shock and thought that they had been caught red-handed, but as they got closer, they saw blood all over his face and eyes, making him almost blind. Edvard then looked at Natalia and then whisked the crew member off to the infirmary for treatment. It looks like they had just narrowly escaped a full-on mutiny by just a hair. Soon the rest of the unkempt and scruffy crew returned and asked Natalia to look at the UEC bank account for the syndicate. To her surprise, this was a massive amount of income for just one day. She looked at them with a look of respect for the first time ever and congratulated them even on such a momentous haul. And that tonight's dinner will be one of celebrations and music for all. The crew couldn't believe their ears and eyes. None bothered to ask questions, instead hurry for their quarters to clean up and get ready for the night's meal, music and drinking. Natalia then slid sultrily onto her throne, relaxed and relieved and extremely happy with how the day had turned out for her, Edvard and the crew. This was also probably the last major celebration they may possibly ever have as a pirate crew as well, so why not make the most of it, she thought to herself. Edvard and the crew soon met at the main mess hall for a meal fit for royalty, the best alcohol they'd ever had that didn't taste like paint thinner and make you cough up blood for the next 3 days as well. The music rang out throughout the base on the dilapidated comms system the entire night as well. Everyone eventually fell asleep where they were last standing for all of the excitement, great food and alcohol in their bloodstreams. The next morning, after everyone had finally got to their feet and slept off their hangovers, were all called to the throne room for a formal meeting. Natalia, standing to attention herself for once, addressed the crew in a military manner. "Edvard, come stand by my throne," she ordered. Edvard briskly walked up to the left-hand side of the throne and took his place. Natalia then began to fill them all in on the potential life-threatening mission that her and Edvard had been tasked to take on by their current client. The men all stood there in attention, who knows what was going through their minds as she addressed them with this. Once she had made them privy to the situation, she then asked for the crew to perform his stakes raids to fuel this endeavor, as it would be expensive and potentially be their end. But if they were to succeed, all of them would be the new controlling force in the universe. The UEE will be no more, they will have obtained knowledge and technology far beyond even the 11's capabilities and be utterly unstoppable finally. All of them would be far richer than even their wildest fantasies could even dream up as well. This would change the face of the universe for all of them forever. The crew couldn't contain their excitement at the possibility and began to ring out, "All hail the Queen, long live Queen Natalia." Natalia then looked over to Edvard and then with a subtle nod he produced the 100-bit encryption breaker. The crew went dead silent as he began to speak. This in my hand, you scurvy scum, is the key to our future success and dominance in the entire universe. It's a 1000-bit encryption key breaker capable of cracking even the most secure 11 lock or security console. Our goal is to find the location of a collapsed wormhole that holds the secrets to our dominance in the universe. Myself and Natalia will be spearheading this operation, and we ask that for once you stop worry about your personal gain and look to the entire crew for support now. This is the key to your future and the key to unforetold amounts of UECs in your hands, pockets and personal bank accounts finally. You will be free to do whatever, however and with whoever you want finally. No longer will you need to raid and steal, deal with the Bane you for slaves and kill anyone every again. Although we all know how much fun killing is, it'll be a hobby, pastime or for sport in future. The crew, grinning with anticipation, all wholeheartedly agree without hesitation, and the meeting then comes to a close with Natalia saying, "Okay, so why are you all still here?" The crew scramble to their ships for takeoff and head out for their new mission. Soon the crew had left the asteroid base and had headed for targets in the verse. Natalia then turned to Edvar and declared that if they make it through this and the promises made to her by their client come true, that they will be together without anyone to bother them ever again. This life will end and a new one will begin together. Edvar, with a conscientious smile on his face, then agreed wholeheartedly straight afterwards. Then the preparations began. Hours later, both Natalia and Edvar, with encryption breaker in hand, headed for their ships destined for 11 space. Meanwhile on Jalan, the administrator had finished his final preparations and was ready to head for Hads 1 to confront Bracca once and for all. As he headed towards the hulking doors of the base, Supernova ran up to him for a final embrace to wish him luck. Well, that's what he thought. Supernova had attached a life systems monitor and inbuilt tracking device to the administrator's heavy armor collar while in the embrace. She wasn't going to just let him go it alone, and she certainly wasn't going to let him go alone either. Wink. The administrator then headed for his ship and began flight check operations when Tularia showed up out of the blue to offer him a flower. Yes, a flower of all things. Tularia had sensed that he was feeling frightened and very nervous for some reason, and had provided him with a very special flower that only grows on Jalan that calms the nerves and clears the mind. Natural medicine, as such you could call it. He politely took the flower and placed it near the air vents on his ship's dashers to keep it fresh as long as possible for his flight to the Hads sector and to Hads 1. He thought to himself, a nice keepsake to keep him on mission and to remind him what he's fighting for every second of his long journey as well. Soon engines roar to life, thrusters batter the soft green grass under his ship, and then lift off. The mission had begun. As he left the stratosphere, he took one final look down towards the base at Jalan and then engaged his afterburners and boosted off into space. Nav system engaged, and then in a split second, gone. While in quantum, the air in the cockpit filled with the sweet and calming scent of the flower that Tularia had provided him before his journey. He became relaxed, and then his mind began to race with the possibilities of what he will encounter on the rocky dead landscape of Hads 1, as this would be his first ever visit to the planet's surface ever. Remember, this was a high-security MESA research planet in Book 1, no one was allowed on the surface other than authorized scientists and security forces at the time. As he continued from stop to stop along the way, his mind became sharp and extremely focused, with a clarity he had never had before. He didn't know why, but maybe his old military training was kicking back in, and now he was hyper-focused and aware of every little thing around him, even the pitch of the engines when slightly changing course even. This was all new to him, but still put it down to what he was already thinking. The flower had done its job perfectly. Soon he exited the jump point into the HADS sector, and on his nav computer there was HADS 1 in the not so far distance, only several kilometers away now. One more short jump and the real mission begins, he thought to himself. He already has of his interrogation questions uploaded to his helmet and was more than prepared to take Bracca on once and for all. If he was to die, he thought he would at least have a military death and would be happy with what he had achieved in the universe and for it in his time. As he entered into the short jump and pressed the quantum engagement button on his yoke, it hit. It was a full-on flashback to that day. Everything played out moment by moment from the time the Hull D came into sight with the injured mercenaries and the voices of the Vanduul ringing in his head like bells from a church steeple again and again. He eventually came to, and in front of him was HADS 1's eastern face. It filled all of the space in his frontal view. He could see large volcanic eruptions on the planet's surface from even all the way out here. He knew that bringing the heavily customized and upgraded HEAV armor suit was the right choice, although not that comfortable in his ship will be perfect for the conditions he will be facing shortly now. A hail on his comms system then broke his line of thinking. "Administrator, it's Supernova, please answer." The message repeats. The administrator then reluctantly answers the call, slightly annoyed but appreciative of the human contact all the way out here at the same time. "Hello Supernova," the administrator announces on the video call. Supernova then replies congenially and warmly and says, "How was the flight?" "Trying to break the ice under the current circumstances." The administrator then responds with one of his best genuine laughs and continues on the conversation before Supernova, sensing that his guard is down just enough to tell him what she has already gone and done without him knowing. The administrator replied with, "Although this isn't protocol, I appreciate it, though if this goes badly, I don't want anyone else in the firing line, okay? Just me and me alone." Supernova then begrudgingly agrees and wishes him luck, although he didn't need luck. He's the goddamn administrator for a reason, by name and by application. He administrates justice to all that cross his path. And this is why he was so highly regarded even to this day by the squad and the entire military and civilian forces at Jalan, and also off the cusp Natalia as well. The call then soon ended and the administrator then began the descent into the toxic, hot and acrid atmosphere of HADS 1. On his final descent to the surface, he picked up a strange, powerful electromagnetic resonance signal from the other side of the planet. The energy signal was consistent and stable. This must be where Bracca is, he thought to himself, and then began the flight over to the far side of the planet. First flying back into atmosphere and then short jumping to the other side of the planet to begin re-entry again. As he entered into atmosphere, at first there was a glitch on of nav computer and radar screen. Then seconds later all of the lights in his cockpit began to turn on and off, then the engines went dead. All he had left was maneuvering thrusters and VTOL thrusters left. As he gained speed towards the planet's surface only 20 kilometers out, the thruster systems then failed as well. He was dead in the sky and falling fast. He tried emergency reboot sequences but nothing was responding, not a single thing. His ship was entirely dead. He then began to realize very quickly that this was it. This was how he went out, and his entire life began to play out in front of his eyes. Cue montage of the entire sage in fast forward, highlight moments and the worst moments as well. He then in this state did all he could and crossed his arms across his face and readied for the imminent impact. He wasn't going to survive, but his military training took over automatically like muscle memory, all while his life was still flashing in front of him. The whistle of the wind on his fuselage and windscreen began to buffet and break, making the sound almost unbearable to hear. He then closed his eyes and got ready for the end. Moments later, nothing. No sound of the wind, no sense of motion and no sound of any kind. He slowly looked up and was blinded by a powerful light. He thought this was the afterlife and this was his first introduction to it for a moment until the light dissipated, revealing the warm glowing outline of a being holding his ship only centimeters off the ground nose first. It was Braca. The administrator, utterly in shock, fear and overwhelming emotion, looked to Braca in absolute confusion and simultaneous appreciation. Braca the gently manually extended the landing gear, righted the ship and placed it gently down on the rocky surface. He then opened the hatch and beckoned the administrator to exit the ship. But not with his hands but his mind instead. The administrator with a sharp nod then took a moment to compose himself. Not a word spoken, they pulled out the emergency lever to release the stairs to the ship. He then slowly and shakily exited the ship to then for the first time in his life land boots on the ground of this desolate alien landscape. He then turned to Braca and before he could even mutter a word, Braca began to speak. "Hello my child and welcome to Hades. I know everything you're about to ask and there will be no need for any interrogations. I will tell you everything you've ever wanted to know now. I have a place for us to go away from this unfavorable environment here. Follow me my child." The administrator without a word or hesitation then followed Braca to a cloaked structure where he could see the faint shimmer of the cloak from a short distance out. They entered though the cloak and what he saw amazed him. It was a fully functional alien base, well the front doors of it that were above ground at this point. His helmet went crazy with scanning information and subterranean floor plans and systems humming below. At the doors there were more of those strange GLYPHS as well. As Braca got close to the doors, all of the GLYPHS lit up in a strange pattern to then go dormant again with the opening of the doors. This was all being secretly recorded back on Jalan by Supernova the entire time. She had a live feed of each and every moment from the second the administrator entered into his ship to Tularia, giving him the flower to write this second. "Welcome to my home, administrator, or should I call you by your real name, Adam?" The administrator hadn't heard that name since he was a young boy and for a moment didn't correlate the name Adam to himself to then realize that Braca was referring to him. The administrator then said that will be fine for now and a pleasant reminder of a time gone by as well. "Thank you Braca." Braca simply smiled and then asked him to follow him further into the facility. The two of them walked for several minutes in absolute silence until they entered into what looked like a very lavish living area. Braca then casually asked, "What would you like to drink, Adam?" Adma replied with, "Anything. You know what I like already." Braca once smiled again and headed out of the room for a moment. As he left, he said, "Make yourself at home, why don't you? We have a lot to discuss and get out of that armor, you won't need it here." Adam then took off his armor and sat down on the extremely comfortable lounges and took a deep breath. Soon Braca entered back into the room with Adam's favorite brew, some food and other condiments. He then placed everything down and sat across from Adam, intently waiting for the questions to fly. The administrator /Adam then took a long cold gulp of his beverage and sat back. Looked at Braca and began to ask every possible question he could have, from how he was born, who he was actually born to, as he couldn't really find any factual family history on Earth as to who his parents were and where he was actually born. Just a city in Terra Prime. The official records showed the rest had either been redacted or lost when the UEE came in and cleaned up the records. Braca then began to explain everything. He began with a question. "Adam, have you ever thought why I call you my child at all, and only one other?" The administrator then asked who the other was. He paused and then said, "Natalia." "Yes, your archenemy. Well, from what I now see, not so much anymore, which is why I've led you to here to have this conversation finally." Adam sat up to attention very quickly and with a look of confusion and frustration on his face. Moments of contemplation went by, then he began to speak. Hang on a second, is this just a ruse and you're having a really big joke at my expense right now, Braca, to break the ice, to tell me something actually serious right now? Or are you actually telling me the queen of the goddamn pirates is my goddamn biological sister? Not even I can believe such a tall tale, and what, you're our father? Preposterous, utterly insane, the very thought of what you're proposing right now, with frustration, disbelief and sarcasm in his tone towards Braca. Braca once again smiled and simply sat back in his seat and waiting for the reality to finally set in for Adam now. Braca the continued. Your last name, have you ever given any thought to that as well? Smith. Adam Smith. Back in the 21st century, Smith was a fake name given by countless of your species as an alias to your real names for a multitude of different reasons. I always found it funny that Smith was the last name used and not Urbica instead. Yes, we also have / had our own alias last names as well. Urbica is as to your Smith. The reason why you couldn't find any real tangible evidence of your family history on Earth is that you weren't born there to being with. You're not a Terran, Adam, you're something far more impressive than any mere mortal human, my child. There you go again, Braca, taking the piss. Why, said Adam. Braca then looked Adam straight in the eye and said, I'm not taking anything, my child, I'm telling you what you now need to know finally. Adam then broke into tears, quiet tears though, not a sound out of him, only streaming tears down his face all the time while intently focusing on Braca's face. Braca got up and then sat next to Adam. Adam looked over to him and said, Father. Yes, my child, I am your father. I'm sorry we had to finally have the truth come out under such unfortunate circumstance, but here we are. Adam then slowly leaned in for an embrace. Braca, never before having been physical with anyone or anything, awkwardly leant in to copy what Adam was doing. A rush of emotions he had never felt in his entire existence fell over him. Was this what humans felt as love, he thought to himself in that moment. The embrace ended after a time and Braca went back to the seat across from Adam again. The real conversation had only just begun. Act #3. Edvar and Natalia had just left Castra when Natalia got a hail from Braca on her ship's comms on a secured channel. Natalia hesitantly answered the call, knowing that something big was about to happen. She could feel it in her soul. Hello, my child, how goes your journey? Natalia replied with, we have just left Castra and are in Quantum on our way to 11 in space now, Father. I trust you and Edvar are very happy now, he asked. Natalia blushed brightly across her soft milky-skinned face immediately. Braca, before she could say anything, I'm extremely happy for you, daughter, he's worthy of you and will make a great addition to the family. Natalia paused for a moment. Family, Father? That would imply I have siblings, duh. Braca then said, no need for the accent, daughter, we're on a secured hail, just be yourself as I have someone you need to talk to. Natalia, trepidatious and very nervous, replied with, okay, Father, but who could it possibly be? Braca then called out on the comms call and said, Adam, come over here. Then her video screen came to life on her ship's dash. Is this a joke? Natalia screamed out over the comms, almost deafening both Braca and Adam on the other end. Natalia, would you like to calm down now, please? Said Braca. Natalia then gained her composure. My child, please tell Adam your real name. Natalia then quietly said, Eve. Sorry, we didn't quite hear you, child, please say it again but louder. Natalia, still quite flustered and blushing, said in a strong normal voice, Eve. Adam then stepped back for a second. Looked at both Eve on the screen and Braca. Then he said, hang on a second, it's that the names of that Earth tradition where there was some kind of garden and the two first humans on Earth in Terra born or something, and they get exiled from the planet or something along those lines. Braca responded quickly as to clear up any confusion in a confident and authoritative voice. No, they were not brother and sister, if that's what's running through both of your devious minds, my children. We made them as a first environmental trial on that planet to see if what we had created could even survive on such a hostile planet to begin with. And luckily our engineering paid off. Otherwise, neither of you would be here. We experimented with other planets and their environments and also made the Vanduul, Bainu and 11 and as well we also created the Talarians, but they were a mistake made by a break-off faction that resided here on Hads 1, and that's why I've brought Adam here. They have one of their species back on Jalan and I want to help her and her species recover with some changes to their DNA profile in the process as well. Her species can offer such benefit to all races in the universe with the right adjustments made for their future success. Anyway, back to what I was saying. Then we sat back and watched ever since. Never to intervene and to watch our experiments succeed or fail, as you call it, survival of the fittest. We called it success and failure rates instead. And well, we're here now and I'm all that's left of my species in this universe, and I'm willing to make the ultimate sacrifice to have you prosper now. All will be explained when that part comes to light. For now, my daughter, you need to find that wormhole for us. Once you're there, please tell me. I have something planned for you all. Eve and Adam looked at each other, giggled a bit and then ended the call. It seems there won't be a need for parley now at least, but an amalgamation of both groups into one big family instead. Adam and Braca then set off back into the seating area on the lounges to bring Adam up to speed on everything finally and to commence the DNA program for Tularia and her species. Cycle after cycle, and Adam and Braca had finished their conversations with him, brought up to date and still digesting the information as they began work on the DNA resciencing program. Supernova was also invited to the base and also has the same unceremonious landing as Adam did, but to her he was still the administrator for now and addressed as such in her presence. Oh, the video and audio feed turned off for her at Jalan as soon as they went in the doors, for any of you wondering at this point. She didn't have a clue of what had transpired after the doors had opened to the base. Meanwhile, Natalia and Edvar had landed in a quiet part of Kabari on the dark side of the planet. As they landed, the ground under their ships felt soft and spongy. Initial scans revealed that the air was breathable, but high humidity was present. Though oxygen was abundant and all other gases were present to breath without consequence. Both Eve / Natalia and Edvar exited their ships to land of sodden and marshy ground. They took a quick look around with only the lights on their helmets to illuminate the area in their close proximity to each other and began to run long-range scans to identify any structures in range. They then cloaked their ships and, luckily not having engaged with any 11 ships or ground-based facilities on their way to their landing site, began the long walk to the closest unknown structure location, which just happened to be a distribution center, by the way, Serendipity right, which was still several days' hike to hitch a ride on an unsuspecting deep space cargo ship that they would need that encryption breaker for to commandeer the ship with. Finally, several hours went by and the star came into sight above the horizon. They were greeted with a tropical paradise, full of insects and marshes along the way. Multiple challenges, including walking in waist-deep water for an entire cycle before they found solid enough ground to rest on for the night. Weird and wonderful animals which make really tasty food during their journey as well. This was truly a hidden gem in the universe, and why they 11 didn't want the Messer anywhere near it and were willing to fight for it to the death. It all made sense now. And why they 11 are so disdainful of Terrans and all humans alike. Just look at what's happened to the Stanton system. As they continued their journey, they eventually came across their greatest challenge on this planet yet. The unknown structure ended up being a main distribution hub and massive arterial spaceport. There was no way they were going to just sneak in undetected, simply not going to happen. Natalia then said to Edvar, there is simply no way we're going to survive this, it's a suicide mission, even for us. Edvar simply cheekily grinned and then reached into his jacket pocket and presented 2 shield refraction generators. Natalia looked at him and asked what they were. Edvar explained that he found them when he was on his parts hunt for the encryption breaker from a less than fortunate rare arms collector on his travels. Natalia then immediately smothered him with kisses and appreciation. But darling, what race makes these? Edvar returns very quickly with its 11 and Tech My Queen, extremely rare and was to be used as prototypes in the Battle of Castra incursion. These are the only remaining units in existence and we just have to have them now. With a smile and a smirk, he gently places one of the refractions generators on her hip and then on himself. They mutter the 11 and activation codes and then both of them disappear from view altogether, not even a shimmer of the cloak at all. They had truly become utterly inevasible and undetectable now. Both Natalia and Edvar, like cats stalking their prey, slowly encroached upon the facility. Ships coming and going, 11 and everywhere. They had to choose their step carefully now. And they both landed boots on the solid metallic platform for the first time in many cycles. They need to get their land legs again. Though soon after entering into the main facility bay where they greeted with a 11 and ship they had never seen before. It was hulking and had no visible weapons on it but just panels where weapons may eject from and move into place. It made no sense to them as they passed by it. Soon they had moved to the main facility and engineering bay where ships were being repaired and fit out with new weapons and systems loadouts. Then the sign up ahead, planetary shipping, came into sight. They carefully and slowly continued toward the new section which opened up to a massive area inside the structure. There was a massive hangar door above them, one that even a javelin could fit into with a generous amount of space to spare. It was truly gigantic in there. As they hid behind crates and navigated their way around countless 11 and doing their business, Edvar stopped and texted Natalia, "There it is. That's the right model and class ship we need to get onto, my queen." Natalia texted back, "Excellent my love, let's go." Sneakily the two of them went to the back of this ship to a maintenance access port and began the hack. The device worked perfectly, although it took much more time than Edvar and Natalia would have liked to gain access to the ship. They both climbed in and shimmied through the conduit on board and then closed the access port behind them. Now it was time to wait for the loading and lift off out of atmosphere. It didn't take long to hear the main cargo bay doors to open and cargo being loaded onto the ship. After some time, both had fallen asleep where they lay. Many hours went by and finally the soft hum of system components woke them both from their slumber. May 11 and voices on board the ship began, stomping noises up and down the hallways of the massive ship. Then a short silence. Everything began to vibrate and rattle in the conduit where Natalia and Edvar were lying. Then a booming sound over the hangar comms in 11 and translated to Xerxes, "You are cleared for launch. Please secure all remaining cargo and perform a ship-wide security and systems check before embarking." What seemed to be the captain on the ship then responding with multiple instructions to the crew and once again stomping and voices calling out from all over the ship. Then in a moment of utter terror a crew member opens the conduit hatch and reaches its arm in only centimeters from Natalia's face. It seems there was a blown fuse that needed replacing and the crew member was in the process of replacing it. Then they stopped for a moment, took some deep sniffs of the air and looked right at Natalia, right in her eyes. Moments went by with Natalia looking this alien right in the eyes, thinking to herself, this is how we die. Moments later, a clang on the ground outside the conduit port and the crew member became distracted, quickly replaced the fuse and closed the port door again, locking it from the outside. Both Natalia and Edvard then breathed a sigh of utter relief. This almost just ended in the most terrible and anticlimactic way possible for the both of them. Soon the hangar doors began to shake and shudder the ship as they began to open. The ship began to shudder and shake, then take off. The boom of the thrusters was deafening from withing the conduit, but there was nothing they could do about it at this point and had to suffer the noise for now. Then additionally the roar of the engines kicked in. A strong thrust and both Natalia and Edvard slid down towards the access port, with Edvard's quick thinking putting his feet out to stop them from simply ejecting out of the port to the exterior of the ship. Both firmly pressed up against each other but secure held on for the trip to space, where they could regain movement again and make their way back up the conduit to the access port into the ship again. Some time went by as the ship slowly gained altitude and finally made it out of atmosphere. Both of them then slowly worked their way back up to the internal port and began the hack to unlock it. After some time, all of the voices dissipated and the stomping around the ship ceased. This was their opportunity to make their entrance, although very quietly. First Edvard, then with help Natalia, entered into the ship's hallways. Edvard then uploaded the schematics of the ship onto Natalia's holoband. Natalia then grabbed Edvard by the arm. He then turned to her as to query what she wanted, and in front of his face, with refractor units temporarily turned off, was 2 pouches of a mysterious substance. He then quietly asked, "What's this?" Natalia responded with, "I also have a few tricks up my sleeve as well, my love." It was Tellurian cat's eye. 2 pouches of it. How she got it, even I, the narrator, doesn't know, guys. But she had it all the same. Edvard leant forward and kissed her gently on the lips and grinned conscientiously with a devious look in his eye. He knew exactly what she had in mind. Both of them re-engaged their refractors and went to work, stalking the hallways and blowing the Tellurian cat's eye into a few unsuspecting well-armed 11 security guards along the way. They then took their weapons and other useful items from their now blissfully sleeping bodies, making sure to drag them well out of sight of any other crew members, and trust me, these guys were extremely heavy, especially as dead weight, so Natalia had an idea. She snuck behind one of the crew and gently blew some of the powder over their shoulder while standing in sniffing distance. Drop out cold. This one had a handheld tractor beam on him, which made moving these lugs an easy task. They both moved the sleeping souls to a containment room for food storage at the back of this ship, and certainly a place no one would find them anytime soon. They then continued to go from room to room, knocking out ever 11 they could find. Soon almost the entire ship was blissfully unharmed and sleeping like babies. All that was now left was the bridge. The bulkhead doors needed to be hacked, and this presented a problem for Natalia and Edvard. How could they hack the doors without tipping off the bridge crew? They had scanned, and it was a crew of 6 of them all in there. Then Natalia had a brilliant idea. "Edvard, darling, how would you like to get your daily exercise?" Edvard looked at her as to say nah. Natalia looked back as to say yep. Edvard then lowered his refractor and knocked on the bulkhead door. Narrator, I know nuts, right? The doors then opened soon after, with 3 very puzzled 11 bridge crew unarmed standing there, and then poof, a face full of Tellurian cat's eye. The rest of the bridge crew, including the captain, leapt up to see Edvard just standing there in the doorway with it still wide open and 3 of their crew on the ground. They all began yelling and running at his simultaneously. Edvard, sensing this is going to hurt, A lot ran down the hallway with them in hot pursuit. Natalia stood there and quietly laughed to herself internally to then causally enter onto the bridge and lock the doors. After quite a bit of hide and seek and puffs of powder flying around the ship, Edvar called out on comms, "Okay my queen, now you've had your fun and I've got at least 3 cycles of steps in just one day, can please get this massive chunk of metal to where we're meant to be finally." Natalia congratulated him and complimented him by saying, "Well, look at this way darling, your abs will just be even more impressive now. I don't see any downsides, do you?" Edvar then laughed and agreed. Natalia then opened up the bridge doors and Edvar then entered the bridge. He then used the device one more time to hack the ship's systems, turn off the transponder and make them invisible to anyone that may be looking for them now. Natalia entered in the coordinates into the ship's computer and set it for cruise control. They had some cleaning up to do before the Talarian cat's eye wore off. And they had a very inconvenient issue on their hands outside of the bridge moving forward. After several hours, both Natalia and Edvar ended up their clean-up operations with the last of the now not so sleeping okay look dead, very dead 11 and on board being sent on a final spacewalk. Did they both sit down for a meal and go to sleep? This was going to be a long journey ahead of them to their coordinates now. And I'm sure you can guess how they passed the time over the next few cycles already. Yes. We don't need to revisit that again, do we? After the 8th cycle, a ship-wide notification rang out across the ship. Cruise control will disengage in 3 hours. Your destination will be in range in 3 hours and counting. Natalia was the first to her feet, strikingly naked with Edvar close behind, casually walked to the bridge in all their splendor to check on the bridge systems. "Well darling, the honeymoon is over, back to work it seems." Edvar then interjected, "My love, we still have 3 whole hours still." Natalia then smirked and pulled him close and yeah, I know enough of that already. We know. Okay, back on track with the story. 1 hour until disengaging cruise control. Both Natalia and Edvar, after showering together, both suited up, had something to eat and got ready for what awaited them. Soon both were sitting at the bridge scanning with their eyes for what they were hopefully going to see. A jump gate. As they neared their final destination, what they were looking for came into sight finally. Though this wasn't like any jump gate they'd seen before. It was a massive ring with platforms that seemed to have large crystals on them. It was truly an alien sight that probably no other human aside from the Lost Fleet had ever seen before. This was certainly what they were looking for, but not even the 11 ship's computers had this mapped and couldn't even map the structures as anything either. The scans just continued to spit out reports saying unknown anomaly. Not known. Natalia then sent a comms call from the bridge to Bracca back on Hades 1. The main ship's hollow screen then burst into life with both Adam and Bracca smiling with joy and great news for the both of them. Edvar was shocked and taken back by what he was seeing. He then screamed out, "What the hell and who the hell?" Natalia turned to Edvar and said, "My love, I'll explain it all to you very shortly, don't worry, this is part of the plan I was telling you about." Edvar responded with, "Yeah, but that's the goddamn fucking administrator, Natalia." Natalia then nervously responded with, "He's just not a subjugator, he's my brother, my love." This was all far too much for even Edvar, who then fell to the floor and fainted. Natalia then went back to the hollow screen and said, "Well, that went a lot better than I expected, right?" "Well, as good as expected, yes." Looking for confirmation from both Adam and Bracca. Instead, Adam and Bracca burst into uncontrollable laughter, almost both falling to the ground with hysterics. After a huge laughing fit, they both got to their feet and congratulated Eve on being such a good sport and what a welcome to the family too. Eve in her normal voice simply said, "You two have it coming when I see you next, you bastards." Adam then piped up, "At least he's got brains and doesn't look like a Tarelin mole rat. You could have done a lot worse, sister." Eve then simply put up the middle finger and said, "Okay. So aside from my very lucrative love life and my exceptional choice in men, thanks again Adam, love you brother." Adam smirking still from his comment but very excited and happy for her at the same time. "What now? Look. It's not working and I'm sure it's got something to do with you, father, am I right? Or otherwise, why the hell would you have sent me out here against almost impossible odds to pull this off now? Can you please finally let us both in on this?" From the background, "Hi Natalia, oh sorry Eve." Supernova had been in the lab working on the DNA gene therapy and overheard the commotion from the living R and went to investigate. "Hello Supernova." Supernova taken back for a moment, "Hang on, where is your accent?" Braca intervened and explained everything to Supernova. A big "or" rang out and Supernova then burst onto the screen. "Hi Adam's sister." Adam looked and Braca, both shrugged their shoulders and just went with it at this point. Supernova then turned to both Braca and Adam and smirked and slinked off back to the genetics lab once again. Adam then with an internal thought get vocalized, "Is there nothing she doesn't fucking know?" He, then realizing his error, quickly apologized and they went on to more serious conversation. Act #4. The screen in the genetics lab began flashing with a soft audible alarm sound in the research lab. Process complete on the screen. Supernova the early riser, she was entered into the lab to see the screen flashing and the audio alarm softly ringing out. As she waked to the panel expecting the worst, she was pleasantly surprised with DNA sequencing complete. 100% success rate. This Light One's tech was amazing, she thought to herself as she downloaded the report to her Mobiglass to read through over her morning breakfast in the living area of Braca's facility. Every single thing had just worked. Literally everything. Supernova couldn't contain her excitement and let out an audible yelp of excitement as she read the report. Soon Braca and Adam had made their presence known and had also entered into the living area, with Adam heading off to make some breakfast and Braca just recently entering back into the facility from his sun bath for the morning. Supernova sat patiently and quietly, still engrossed in the report, until Adam sat down and began his breakfast. "Supernova, is that the results of the gene therapy?" Supernova with an ear-to-ear grin looked up from her Mobiglass and then closed it in front of him. Said, "I'm very pleased to tell you that the entire DNA sequencing went perfectly, Adam. Everything just worked perfectly. This Light One's tech is simply amazing. We need this for our medical bay back on Jalan ASAP." Her excitement caught the ear of Braca, who then calmly entered into the room. "Supernova my dear, there won't be any need for that now. And congratulations, you are the proud owner of an entirely new species genome now. Though you won't be applying it on Jalan." Supernova then, with a confused and also extremely frustrated look on her face, was about to respond when Braca interjected again. "Hang on, before you get all flustered, let me explain why first," Braca said. He went on to explain this was the next and final stage of his plan. One that would have serious and lasting effects on everybody involved, and to listen to what he had to say now and make some very serious, real life-changing decisions moving forward, as this will only be one of two choices only that you will need to make, and both will have positive and negative impacts on you all. Supernova then leant back into her seat, Adam as well. The conversation and offers begin to be explained in great detail to both of them. One, stay here and live on Jalan, or go somewhere new and free of the current troubles that face you all. Adam then rang out and said, what about Eve? Does she get a say in this? Shouldn't we call her to bring her up to see what she has to say about this as well? This will affect her entire crew as well. Braca then turned to Adam and smiled. You are the good one of the two, aren't you, my child? I'm very happy with you, well done. He then went on to explain everything, and that their choices as leaders of their peoples was to be decided in the best interests of all. This is why Supernova had been brought here to do the gene therapy and DNA resequencing. Yes, I could have done it without thought, but it was a perfect opportunity to help her take on this responsibility, as like it or not, both of you are Tularia's parents in one way or another now. She has her siblings in Anim and Jina and a big and loving protective brother in Flashfire, but she still needs authority figures to look up to still. Who better than the two of you, especially Supernova, taking on the motherly role of helping her raise an entire new genetically engineered race of her species now. And don't worry, you'll have the universe as your playground moving forward to do all of these things in, and much, much more. Adam and Supernova both looked at each other with utter confusion and perplexity, to then both look back at Braca and almost say at the same time, "What are you talking about?" Braca then began to giggle and finally tell them how this will work out. This is how the conversation played out. Option #1 stat here on Jalan and take your chance with the Vanduul, other pirates and the UEE. Deal with the domed city neighbors and always be ready for a fight, not knowing at any time when a threat may come to decimate your people. Including the UEE the way things are currently going. Option #2 leave and begin anew with my people in a place that's safe and peaceful, where no harm will come to you, your people, or your future children ever again. Supernova made her mind up almost instantaneously. Adam sat for a moment and also made his mind up as well. Braca simply sat there waiting for an answer, however long it took. Adam was the first to speak up. He explained that all he's ever known is war and that he would like to take the chance on a new beginning. Supernova simply smiled conscientiously and nodded in agreement. Braca then smiled genuinely and also nodded in acknowledgement. Now that all had been agreed upon, the hail to Eve was sent. On the cargo ship, Eve and Edvar had been relaxing and taking a very rare break when the hail came through to the hollow screen on the ship's bridge. They briskly walked to the bridge upon hearing the audio alarm that a hail was incoming on the bridge. Eve then accepted the hail. Braca, Adam and Supernova were all in attendance on the screen. Eve, my child, a decision has been reached and is unanimous and works perfectly into my plan. I will begin operational procedures now. Please tell me when the crystals on the platforms begin to light up. Eve then stared intently at the gate and platforms, waiting for them to activate. Braca quietly extricated himself from the call, leaving only Adam and Supernova still on the call. He then headed off deep into the base. A short time later, a soft hurrying sound enveloped the base. Eve then reported, "I'm seeing them light up one after the other." Both Adam and Supernova looked on with intrigue and trepidation as they all lit up one after the other. Braca then reappeared shortly after to see that all of the platforms had activated on Eve's end. "Excellent, my children, this is it." All of them said, "What is it?" over each other. Braca then said, "There's no time to explain the rest." Adam and Supernova got back to Jalan and begin preparations. "Eve, call your crew. It's time." Eve then smiled and nodded. Edvar, completely lost in conversation, looked to Eve. She then smiled and said, "I told you we will be rich beyond our wildest dreams, didn't I, my love? This is our ticket out. You need to get the crew on Hale and get those scallywags all to these coordinates immediately." Then Edvar caught on. They were all making as many UECs as possible to pay for their way to us now. He smirked and realized how intelligent and scheming the love of his life was. but at the same time that she was compassionate and not just stunningly beautiful on the outside but behind the bravado and also fake accent that she played so very well that she was also part light one and a beautiful soul as well. He then confirmed with himself that he was indeed the luckiest man in the universe, although you'd probably have the same argument made by Flashfire where Supernova is concerned as well, right? Both Adam and Supernova sent a hail to the city-sized base on Jalan over the general comms for everyone to hear. They both explained the entire situation and that anyone that wanted to stay was welcome to, but those that wanted this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to start packing before they both get back. All logistics that were required for food, fuels and anything else people wanted to take with them packed and ready upon their return. An end to ignorance and a beginning of a new hope and salvation for all awaits all of us now, both of them finished saying at the end of their public address. Soon the base was alive with activity. People running everywhere and people openly talking in the streets. Ships being lined up right next to each other with tailgates down to fit on literally everything possible. The entire fleet of fueling ships had just taken off to the local gas giant to fill their tanks full of hydrogen and quantum fuel. All of the scouts and mining, escort and cargo teams were slowly coming back in for landing one by one, ready for the exodus into the stars as well. Things were at a fever pitch in preparation now. In the meantime, Eve and Edvar had already ordered the crew to begin their journey immediately, and although confused didn't ask questions as their queen of the pirates, the infamous Natalia, had made this a formal order as well. Braca sat back watching this all happen, was pleased with what he had achieved and that his children are part of their number as well. To be honest, if they weren't, you wouldn't even be reading this story or hearing it as well. Braca, then satisfied with the progress of everything, headed back deep into the base again to complete final preparations. 3 cycles went by and both Adam, the administrator, and Supernova exited the jump gate into Elysium once again and for a final time. They passed by the gas giant with an armada of fueling ships heading back to Jalan on what looks like their final preparations run, and decided to escort them back in as to perform one last military token of operation to end their time in this sector. The fueling ships hailed them and welcomed them back and thanked them for the final escort. What a wonderful way it was for them to have their leaders escort them home one last time, they rang out on the comms. Supernova and Adam both smiled genuinely in their cockpits and headed for Jalan one final time. Soon they all landed safely with Flashfire waiting urgently to greet his soon-to-be wife and the landing area. As soon as their eyes locked from her cockpit, you could see the love between them. Such a rare and priceless commodity in the universe. Flashfire scooped her up before she could even place boots on the ground and carried her into the city base. Adam simply looked and smiled, knowing he had definitely made the right decision now without question. All was abuzz with ships and all species of Terran and alien from Banu, 11 and our Kai Elrian Tularia all rushing about loading the last of what was needed for the journey. Soon over the base-wide comms, Supernova called out to say, "Everyone that is leaving, please enter your details into the screens around the base with the Exodus button on them, please. We want to do a roll call before leaving to account for everyone that is coming. This will be very important for our journey. We will be leaving in divisional groups and travel together as an armada. For those of you choosing to stay, please enter your details into the remaining button on the terminals instead." Several hours later, everyone had entered their detail and were assigned to designated ships in the fleet for boarding. Then another call out over the general base comms once again, "Thank you all for doing your roll call. Please commence boarding procedures now." The entire city base slowly emptied, everyone on their ships and all quiet in the streets. Though there was one single soul on the remaining list Supernova immediately recognized. It was their old bird Tavarian who had chosen to stay behind. She kept to her promise. It seems that she was going to stay here till her last days. It seems still. Supernova knew better than trying to argue with her at this point, and instead quietly went to her in her garden in the city, embraced her and thanked her so everything that she had done for all of them. She then explained that her time here was also short as well, and that she wasn't going to survive the journey anyway. She gently pecked Supernova on the cheek and said in a frail voice, "It's time to go. I will always be with you all, looking down on you from the stars wherever you are now. Now go, go, you'll make an old bird cry, go." Supernova, with a tear in her eye, then slowly got to her feet and leant in for one more embrace before he hurriedly headed for her ship. Over the ship comms a general hail went out from Supernova and the administrator, Adam. "Today is a momentous day, our people. We will no longer know fear, hate, hunger, or disease ever again. We have friends waiting for us on the other side who will welcome us with open arms, and Tularia, once we get there, we have a massive surprise for you as well." Tularia sheepishly went to the bridge of the ship she was on and asked to speak on comms. The captain of the ship then requested that Tularia speak freely on comms. "Request granted," the administrator said. She then quietly at first began to speak, and as the emotions began to run, she then became confident in her words. She thanked everyone for the love and support she has received, and that there will be many things she will be doing to help get us all set up at our new home when we get there, to show her appreciation for each and every one of them. And yes, there will be cake once she finds the right ingredients for all. The entire armada of ships broke out on comms with "Hoorah" and "Omk, yes please. And we love you, Tularia." Soon the comms settled and Tularia thanked everyone and ended her speech. First the administrator, Adam, led with saying, all ships get ready to launch. Once in space, please synchronize your quantum coordinates to mine, our journey is about to start." Engines roared to life with a cacophony of sound, all different pitches and tones. The armada then all lifted off in unison, some ships more slowly than others in an upward trajectory. Soon noses up to the sky and traveling toward the stars. A time later, after the last of the bigger and slower ships met everyone in space, did the administrator turn on his quantum drive. "All ships, lock onto my quantum signature now." All ships synced up one after the other until all ships reported quantum lock. Then the final official command from the administrator took place. "This will be my final official command to all of you. Once we get to our destination, you will still have the free will and choice to turn back if you want. It has been an inspiration and a life-affirming opportunity to lead all of you to this point. We are no longer subjugators as of this moment. We are all free beings with no ties left to our old lives anymore. This is our time, our salvation, and our hope for a better, safer and happier future. This is the administrator giving my final official command. Engage quantum in 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10 engage." Then entire fleet then disappeared in an instant from the local space surrounding Jalan and the Elysium system for the last time ever. Several cycles later, the last of the Jalan ships came into view of the gate. The pirates, only getting there hours earlier and who had already been briefed on everything finally with what was happening as well. Braca then sent to hail the entirety of both fleets. "This is Braca. You may or may not know me already. The reason why you are all here today is because of me. This is your opportunity to start anew in safety and without need for anything ever again. All you desire will be provided on the other side of this gate. I know you all have a past, but that past in now just that. Your lives finally start now, and I know you will all do your best moving forward to not just survive but thrive with the care and support only my people can offer now. I wish you luck on your journey, may it be a safe and prosperous one for you all. Natalia, my child, tell me when you're ready and I'll open the gate for all of you. Natalia, Eve, then said, Father, you told me you were coming as well. Braca then tells his first and only real lie ever. Of course, my child, once I've activated the gate from here, I'll speed over to you all and be the last through the gate. I just have some things to wrap up here first. It's okay, I'll be with you soon. Natalia then begrudgingly agreed and made final preparations to enter. Soon all preparations were made and she then called out from the bridge of the 11 ship, We are ready, Father. Braca then began the dial-up sequence and then the gate began to light up GLYPHS around the ring, and then a blasting golden light started from the center and steadily grew to fill the circumference of the ring, to then with an inaudible pop for a vortex. The gate is running at 100% operational capacity, my child, you are safe to enter, I'll see you on the other side. All my love, Father. Natalia then began the locking sequence and entered slowly towards the entry point. At first nothing, then a jolt and slight shudder. The ship then began the entry process. Then pop her Edvar and the 11 ship disappeared from existence. Shortly after, Natalia called back through, with an ecstatic voice and normal voice at that, This is beautiful and there's a planet right here, with a lush green hue, this is paradise. Come through all of you, we have found heaven. Everyone in the Armada and now ex-pirate crew were overjoyed with the news and all began their entry protocols and began their jumps. Several hours had passed, leaving only now the Admiral in his ghost in front of the gate. He hailed Braca one last time. Braca then answered quickly and said, No, my child, I am not coming. Adam then said, You were the leader of the breakaway faction, weren't you? Braca then solemnly said, Yes, my child, I had made mistakes in the search for glory and reputation with my people, and all it did is lead to a planetary bombardment of this base and all but myself surviving the onslaught. I was a coward. I left the base out the back in a small ship and escaped to an underground shelter I had made myself in the case of this experiment that we were working on, all not going to plan. I then hid for millennia to then be discovered by the Vanduul. They were a peaceful spacefaring species, interested in terraforming and science. That's when I saw my opportunity to take this opportunity to get my first experiment right finally, so I began the process all over again with them. Though somehow a natural pathogen got into one of the test samples and in my haste did it go unnoticed. I then let the new and what I thought to be improved genetically superior creations out into circulation as fully grown and fertile adults to help minimize and or eliminate any disease they may have, extend their lifespans considerably and to make them the perfect beings in the universe. No offense to you though, my child, you and Eve are perfect, my finest creations and my greatest work of all. Then everything went wrong all over again. They mutated and began to experiment on each other, twisting their original forms into the monsters you now see. Bloodthirsty and full of hate and destruction. Everything I had tried all backfired time and again until the entire species had lost all of their original features and DNA and were monsters, monsters I could no longer help or get near without their retribution myself. They are a lost species, on that will never be able to be redeemed or brought back to their former glory and intelligence now. Truly a lost cause and my greatest failure to the universe. Then I went to the Messar to the moon base to see if we could tweak your genetics even further with a Terran touch added into the process. But they were so focused on aesthetics and not genetic improvements that much of the same faults that plague your species still persisted in stage #2 of their program. Then they tried to play me, or as you call it, God. They made a monstrosity, something that took from my instructions and weaponized it to being a brutal and undying killing machine instead. I had to stop this before it took over the rest of the universe. It had great qualities but in horrific proportions towards evil application. I could no longer stand by and allow for this to happen. Unfortunately, supernova and flash fire were in the wrong place at the wrong time. I was expecting UE intervention as well all along. I had planned it that way. Ask your sister about that part later. Adam then responded shortly with, yes, I already know, father. Braca then with an unfortunate giggle said, I already knew that too, my son. Sorry your people were put at risk, but I had to tie up those loose ends without anyone working out what I was up to at that point, but I didn't account for flash fire and supernova, did I? They are wonderful people and you are blessed to have them with you for the next part of your journey. You chose well, my son. Now go before I close this gate on you already. Adam then thanked his father for everything and then heads for the gate. Locked in and ready, father. The ship shudders and lurches forward slightly and then the entry process begins. Soon Adam then also finally disappears from existence. Braca with one golden tear running down his face then closed the gate and powered it down for the first and last time. This is where the story of the subjugators of Teveria end and that of Natalia and the pirates. Braca, you ask? Well, no one has heard of or seen him since. It's rumored that when you look at the sun reaching over the horizon, that's him out for his morning sunbake, bringing light to the universe for us all. His lessons learned he's now giving back to us all by providing us light and warmth wherever his light touches in the universe. I hope those that have listened or read this to this point have enjoyed the lore and the alternative truth that may yet one day still have some accuracy when we get Star Citizen, the next universe. Call it Star Citizen 2.0 for now. Let's wait and see what the universe has in store for us now though first.